I'm Diane Macedo. Today on ABC News Live, new concerns about gas prices. OPEC has announced it will slash oil production by 2 million barrels a day after prices were already climbing. What it means for you at the gas pump and how the White House is responding. The new provocation from North Korea. The country fired 2 new missiles just days after launching one over Japan. Now the growing concerns North Korea is preparing for its first nuclear test in years. And the latest twist for Herschel Walker. The Georgia Republican Senate candidate denies paying for an ex-girlfriend's abortion. Now the new questions about whether she is the mother of one of his children. But we begin with those concerns over gas prices after OPEC announced it's slashing oil production. The move is specifically designed to drive up the price of oil. Now the White House is pushing back. Chief economics correspondent Rebecca Jarvis has the latest.
Fallout after OPEC announced it's slashing oil production by 2 million barrels a day come November, raising concerns gas prices could spike again across the U.S. Before the announcement, gas prices were already creeping up in places like California, which saw $8+ per gallon at some pumps this week, with several refineries closed for maintenance, causing a supply shortage.
This is absolutely ridiculous.
It's crazy.
Many Americans now weary of sticker shock after U.S. gas prices reached historic levels this summer, averaging more than $5 a gallon for the first time ever in June.
It will affect, in the end, all of us by somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 30 cents a gallon.
And of course, this comes at a difficult time for inflation near historic highs. Gas prices had been a bright spot in the economy, falling since their record highs hit earlier in the summer. Now with gas prices trending higher, that can mean higher prices for all the goods and services that use gasoline, not just higher prices at the pump. Diane?
All right, Rebecca Jarvis, thanks for that. And the White House says President Biden has directed the Department of Energy to release another 10 million barrels from the country's strategic petroleum reserve next month. But that was already planned before OPEC's announcement. So what's next? Chief White House correspondent Cecilia Vega has the latest. Hi, Cecilia.
Hey, Dan. Good morning. Yeah, President Biden says that he is concerned by this. The White House is calling this move a mistake and misguided, saying clearly it shows that OPEC is siding with Russia on this one. And look, we are hearing that the administration plans to release at least 10 million more barrels from the strategic oil reserve starting next month, and that President Biden is now considering releasing even more on top of that. But really the big question is whether that will help very much in the short term. Hanging over all of this, you'll remember this, of course, that controversial trip that President Biden made to Saudi Arabia back in July. He was seen, of course, fist bumping the crown prince there. The trip was supposed to be about the White House trying to lobby the Saudis to increase oil production. Clearly, the Saudis rebuffed that effort, given what is happening now with OPEC, and shows, frankly, just how little influence Washington and this administration has over Saudi Arabia. But look, Diane, the real gut check on this one is these midterms. They are just around the corner, 30-something days away. The gas price is a top issue for voters. They will go to the polls and vote on this. The White House knows that. So this move could not have come at a worse time for Democrats in this administration.
All right, Cecilia Vega for us from the White House. Thanks, Cecilia. And let's bring in business reporter Alexis Christoforous for more on this. Alexis, the Biden administration had already directed the Department of Energy to release another 10 million barrels from the country's strategic petroleum oil reserve. So how much will that actually help, and how sustainable is that approach?
You know, tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is really only meant for emergency situations. For instance, if we just didn't have enough oil to meet demand. That's not the issue right now. The issue is higher prices with a midterm election just 5 weeks away. So it seems as though the tapping of the reserve is more to manipulate prices than it is to get us out of a hole when it comes to oil. When we do tap the reserves again next month for those 10 million barrels, which, as you say, were already set before the OPEC decision, reserves in the SPR will be at their lowest level since 1984. It's not at the level where we need to worry, but you can't keep going back to an emergency reserve for a long-term issue. This will probably give us some relief in the short term. It is not a long-term solution.
So what options does the president have right now to help keep gas prices reasonable?
There are very few options. One thing he could do is hold back inventory and not send oil to Europe. You know, not a lot of people realize the U.S. is a huge exporter of oil as well. He's already promised Europe that if they put a ban, and they're going to, on Russian oil come December, he's there to help fill that gap. If he takes that off the table now, that's going to look bad on the world stage. Another thing they're planning to do or thinking about doing, going back to Venezuela, which is a very controversial decision, lifting some sanctions on Venezuela in return for that government to talk to the political opposition about bringing democracy back to Venezuela. This would allow Chevron and some other U.S. companies to go there and to drill for oil.
Now, I want to talk about the domestic oil production, because earlier this morning I asked the special presidential coordinator for, I want to get his title right, for energy security. And I asked him about the criticism that the president has faced from some that he has either hampered or not done enough for domestic oil production. I want you to hear his response and then get your reaction.
The Biden administration has given all the tools necessary for the American industry to increase production. The talking points about the president doing something to hinder American industry, that's coming from political circles. That's not coming from the industry.
So he's saying this is a political criticism. It's not actually an oil industry criticism. So what are industry leaders saying about that?
Right. So that comment is not exactly accurate. The past few weeks, we've seen the Biden administration come out lashing against big oil companies. ExxonMobil making $18 billion from May to July alone. And some are saying we should have a windfall tax on those companies' earnings. He's asking those companies to pass along the savings they're seeing along to consumers. The industry itself, big oil companies, have come out against President Biden and have called his energy policies contradictory. So that is the oil industry itself, not politics, talking back to the Biden, pushing back against the Biden administration.
Now, the monthly unemployment report comes out tomorrow. What can we expect to see there?
Oh, this is going to be a big one for the Federal Reserve. We're looking to see if there are signs that the tight labor market is starting to loosen up. We're going to look for wage increases. We know that's inflationary. We did get a bit of data this week that shows there could be some cracks in the job market. The number of openings, job openings, fell by more than 1 million. That's telling us that companies may be starting to slow down their hiring, and that actually, ironically, could be good on the inflation front, might actually force the Federal Reserve not to be as aggressive with those interest rate hikes.
All right, Alexis Christoforous, we appreciate it as always. Thank you.
Sure.
And we're learning new details about a horrific mass shooting at a child care center in a remote part of Thailand. At least 38 people were killed, including at least 24 children, when a gunman opened fire just after noon during nap time at that center. Only one child survived. Local reports say the suspect lived near the daycare, and it's believed his son used to go there but hadn't been in about a month. Authorities say that after the shooting spree, the gunman then shot and killed himself. No word on a motive. And a dozen North Korean warplanes have flown close to the South Korean border after North Korea launched new missiles overnight. It's the latest in a series of provocations, inflaming tensions with the U.S. and its allies. Chief Global Affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz has the latest from Washington.
For the second time this week, North Korea launching ballistic missiles. 2 short-range missiles fired into the sea east of the Korean peninsula. It was Monday when the North Koreans rattled Japanese citizens by sending a medium-range missile right over Japan for the first time in 5 years. That missile traveling farther than any like it before. In response, the U.S. and South Koreans have conducted live fire drills as a show of force. But a South Korean missile launch on Wednesday turned into a military embarrassment. Shortly after liftoff, plowing into a nearby military base and erupting in flames. No injuries were reported, but a local lawmaker accused the South Koreans of threatening the lives of local citizens and failing to give them warning of the missile launch. In fact, the South Koreans didn't report the mishap for hours, and only after videos were posted on social media. But so far, this tit for tat is not having the effect that the U.S. and South Korea wanted. Tensions are now so high that the USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier is heading back to the waters off of South Korea, bracing for what comes next. Diane?
All right, Martha, thanks for that. And back in the U.S., the death toll from Hurricane Ian is climbing, now up to at least 125 lives lost in Florida and North Carolina. After getting a first-hand look at some of the damage, President Biden is now extending federal aid for hurricane response. He also met with families affected by the storm alongside Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in a rare moment of bipartisan solidarity. ABC's Victor Oquendo has the latest.
It was a moment of bipartisanship amid the devastation. President Biden and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis putting politics aside.
We have one job, and only one job, and that's to make sure the people of Florida get everything that they need to fully, thoroughly recover.
The president and first lady on the ground Wednesday in the hard-hit city of Fort Myers for a first-hand look at the widespread destruction caused by Hurricane Ian.
We are cutting through the bureaucracy. We are cutting through the red tape, and that's from local government, state government, all the way up to the president. So we appreciate the team effort.
Hello, I'm Dave Fire Rescue.
Search and rescue teams like Florida Task Force 1 still working around the clock in Pine Island as the death toll climbs to 120 in Florida. The island had been completely cut off, but crews were able to build a temporary crossing bridge.
We're in Port Charlotte, north of Fort Myers, where residents have been waiting for help for days. Ian brought this massive tree down, blocking this house. The good news, that help has arrived.
We went out with members of Team Rubicon, a volunteer organization led by military veterans.
It's a big relief because I had no idea what I was going to do with the tree.
They're clearing debris and tarping roofs, helping very grateful residents.
They've been hammering away all day. They have not stopped.
They have not stopped.
And they have been great.
And more help is on the way as the president announced the federal government would be doubling the amount of time they'd pick up the costs for search and rescue, debris removal, and other emergency measures from 30 to 60 days. Diane?
All right, Victor Kendo, thanks for that. Coming up, a new report claims the woman alleging GOP Senate candidate Herschel Walker paid for her to have an abortion is the mother of one of his children. We have the details after this. Welcome back. Georgia Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker is facing more fallout. The Daily Beast is now reporting the woman who claims he paid for her abortion said she's also the mother of one of his children. ABC News has not independently confirmed the report. Walker, who supports a ban on abortions, has denied paying for the procedure, but now adds that if the claim were true, it would be, quote, nothing to be ashamed of. Congressional correspondent Rachel Scott has the latest.
A new twist in the controversy surrounding Georgia's Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker. The Daily Beast reporting the woman he allegedly urged to have an abortion is the mother of one of his children. The anonymous woman told the reporter that Walker, a conservative who opposes abortion, paid for the procedure and even sent a get well card, something he adamantly denies.
Have you figured out who it is?
Not at all. And that's what I hope everyone can see. It's sort of like everyone is anonymous or everyone is leaking and they want you to confess to something you have no clue about.
The Daily Beast says after Walker made those comments, the woman wanted to share more information about her identity, telling the reporter, I've been civil thus far. I keep my mouth shut, but I'm also not going to get run over time and time again. ABC News has not independently verified the report. The former NFL player, a vocal critic of absent fathers, admitted in June he had 3 other children he never talked about publicly.
You know, I've never denied any of my kids, and I love them more than I love anything.
Walker has not held any public campaign events this week. Several Republican voters leaving his fundraiser told us they're standing by him.
Even with abortion being your top issue, and now you have these allegations against the candidate that you're supporting, saying that he paid for an abortion, you don't believe any of it?
Nope. And many Republicans across the country are rallying behind Herschel Walker. He put out a statement saying the report is not true. The stakes in this race are just so high, it could determine which party controls the Senate. Diane?
All right, Rachel Scott, thanks for that. Coming up, more and more black parents are making the decision to homeschool their children, citing concerns over limitations on what schools can teach when it comes to race. Our Steve Osunsami explores the growing trend when we come back. Welcome back. More than 1 million children have been taken out of public schools since 2019, with parents deciding to teach them at home instead. The rationale for many is the lack of resources and worries about school safety. But a census survey found a noticeable spike in one group of families that's also citing racism and critical race theory. ABC Steve Osunsami traveled to Birmingham, Alabama, where parents worry that soon schools won't be allowed to tell the truth about the history of racism.
7-year-old Tyler Thomas and his 11-year-old sister Zoe are just like most other children in America because they're running late for school this morning.
Excuse me.
Their mother, Doella, needs coffee. The kids need breakfast.
Just drink it real fast.
And it's time for them to go.
Time to start school. Let's go, Ty.
But they don't have to go very far.
Okay, I need this down, because today we're going to start with language arts first.
Homeroom is in a room upstairs at home in the suburbs of Birmingham, Alabama.
Contractions. Remember, we worked on contraction last week.
And since the pandemic, more than 1 million other American families have joined the Thomases, who've decided to pull their kids out of public and private schools and teach their children themselves. In the school year that started in the fall of 2019, there were about 2.5 million homeschool students in America. By the next school year, deep into the public health crisis, it was 3.7 million children. For the school year that's starting now, an estimated 5 million American children are getting their basic education at home. Something's clearly happening.
I really believe it's growing because people are seeing the difference. One of my reasons, though, of homeschooling is because you're at school all day, and then we got to come home and do homework. And you've already been at school all day, and then your child is exhausted. What part of speech have we talked about? We talked about last week. And being at home, I can get school done in 3 to 4 hours versus doing 7 hours in a building, and then I can teach my children where they are. I'm talking about learning styles. We can play our song, and it's super easy and super quick. When you look at the school system, there's a traditional way of learning. Everybody is learning the same way, but are we the same?
No.
We're different. My brain process is different from where your brain process is. I am accountable to Zoe and Tyler. They were the gifts I was blessed with. So I want to do everything I can as their mother, along with their father, to give them what they need and not what the system is saying they need. S.E., very good.
She tells us that the needs of her children are a little different, in part because they're children of color, which helps explain something else that's new. While the U.S. Census reports that the number of families choosing to homeschool have jumped in every group, there was one group that stood out.
If our child was in school, we would be getting called all the time.
Really?
Because he would be labeled, he's bad, he's too busy, he's not a great listener, he's not focused, and all these things because he's so busy.
In Birmingham alone, there are now enough black parents homeschooling their kids that they started a new community.
By the way, if I'm going to be on TV, make sure you give a good side. I'm just kidding.
With more than 200 children.
Just in the last month, we've had 43 new members join our community. Just
in the last month?
In just the month of August.
I just want to let people know that we're not anti-school. We're pro a different option.
The kids grow up together.
Yolanda Chandler and Jennifer Duckworth are the mothers who lead the group and call themselves the Black Homeschoolers of Birmingham.
Jamari.
My youngest son lasted until first grade, but he was actually a victim of racism in kindergarten, first grade. You know, we had an incident where I just got called to the office one too many times. I was one of those parents who was there all the time. You know, I was actively involved with the school. I knew then when I got to that elementary school and I could see his little face through that glass sitting in that principal's office that I was not going to give them the opportunity to break his spirit.
Right.
And that we walked away from that day and we never went back.
They told us they've seen way too many scenes like this one at a school in Orlando, Florida, where police hauled away a little black girl in the first grade after an assistant principal said she started kicking and screaming over sunglasses she wasn't allowed to wear. And they say they're sick and tired of seeing kids running for their lives at school.
Our goal is to create a safe space for Black and brown homeschoolers to learn, play, and grow.
And there's so many of us out there in the community, all over the country.
Exactly.
They also share that they don't like some of the new changes to what's being taught in traditional classrooms. Some of them aren't quite comfortable with their youngest children discussing gender identity issues. And on the other side of the group, there are other parents who worry that schools are now being told to stop teaching the truth about racism in America. And they point to these 23 states that either have new laws on the books or are considering new laws that would make it illegal to teach lessons that were just fine a few years ago about sex, gender, and racial history.
I believe the curriculums are
is whitewashed, to be blunt.
One of those states is theirs, where next year lawmakers are expected to reconsider rules that would prevent schools from teaching what some are calling divisive concepts.
On September 15th, 1963, the 16th Street Baptist Church was dynamited.
And these families are offended that teachers could be told not to tell the true story of what happened to black people in Selma, Alabama, or during the Montgomery bus boycotts, or when former Governor George Wallace famously stood in the schoolhouse door trying to stop the racial integration of state schools. Today, one of the people defending this idea of avoiding divisive concept in schools is this man, the first African-American Republican to serve in the Alabama State House in nearly 150 years.
Did you have black voters, politicians, colleagues on the other side call you a sellout for supporting this?
Unfortunately, that's sad.
That's not a word that you are unfamiliar with.
Well, no, I'm not.
He says he applauds black homeschool families for making a choice that they feel is best for their children, but reminds them that not everyone is in a position to teach their kids themselves.
Before I became an elected official, I spent the last 11 years as advocating for parental rights, for example. So definitely support that parent choice to make that. But also, I would love to challenge parents, if you do see that.
If parents see the whitewashing.
Well, if they see anything that they feel is inappropriate in our school settings, you know, you can take your child removed from that setting, and it's good for your family. But look at the bigger picture, you know, also bring it to someone's attention.
Anyone who might say, you know, you're privileged to be able to teach your children this way. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I honestly do think that I am privileged. And I tell my husband all the time, I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to do this. And I would say I don't want people to judge other people. Whatever decision they're making for their household, that's for their family. Repetition.
The Thomases say it's very likely they will teach both kids at home through high school, and say it's a decision that doesn't come easy.
Do you get tired?
I do get tired. Oh, last week I was saying, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna tell you what I said. Why am I doing this again? Why am I homeschooling? Why don't I sit it? Like, am I called to do this? Like, questioning myself, because you do get tired. And then I have to stop. Or I call a friend that I know I can call, you know. Phone a friend. Hey, this is how, because I need to vent that out of me.
Absolutely.
We don't need to hold that. Like, I don't have to act like I got it all together. Hey, this is what I feel like today. I need you to help me mentally in my brain. This is what's going on.
You love your children.
I do love my children. I do. I sacrifice for those babies just like my husband, you know, does for us as a whole. But I do. I love my children because they're my gift. They're my reward.
Our thanks to Steve Osunsami for that report, and our thanks to you for joining us. I'm Diane Macedo. Do stay with us as ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.